Hey guys,
What up?
just shut the doors. Hi Suzanne.
So who runs the meeting? There's Brian.
Hi Ann.
Hi, Ann.
Hi, how is everyone?
Good.
Good.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
My audio working? Yeah.
Yep.
There we go.
Good evening, everyone.
Hey Jim.
Jim?
Hello, Ann. Nice to see you.
You too. Love everybody's backgrounds.
Oh my gosh, what's everybody's background? You probably have one of everything in our club. I have an engineering background to answer your question.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, part of my brain was an engineer and the other part had some artistic portion to it, I guess. I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, I can see a lot of overlap, particularly in photography.
But what kind of engineer were you, Jim?
Mechanical by education.
Okay. Where did you work?
Allegheny Energy for most of my career, and
Okay.
until they made me an offer I couldn't refuse, and took early retirement, and then worked for the DOE out at their South Park research facility.
Good for you. I'm a mechanical engineer, so
Oh, okay. Who did you work with? Or
I
are
worked for
working with?
PPG for a long time, and then they sold my business a couple of times. I ended up with a company called Westlake out of Houston, and they want everybody to move to Houston, and I didn't want to, so they gave me a package, and I took it.
Yeah. Yeah, those retirement packages can be nice.
Yeah, I don't have any complaints. It escalated my retirement by a couple of years, so I'm good.
And my background is in engineering as well.
Really?
We got
Oh,
all these engineers showed up today.
What kind of engineer are you, John?
Electrical.
Okay, well, we got a little business going here. Chemical, electrical, mechanical.
Yeah, boy, what a diverse group of photographers.
Yeah.
I was a chemist, so.
There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
I'm in chemistry as well, so we can talk.
And by the way, we'll probably wait a couple of minutes just to give people an opportunity to
of course.
get online.
Zoom always has that kind of format of chatting and then awkward silence and then chatting as you
Well, I assume you've been doing your share of Zoom calls.
Oh yeah, it's really even when we're kind of part of us are working in the office, but even then we're zooming from office to office. So I think we can get outside as a luxury.
Yeah. Well, it looks like recently you've been having a lot of activity at the museum, which is good.
Yeah, so we had our Oktoberfest outdoors, so you could get your own picnic pod, stay with your group, and then we're getting ready. We're doing our winter lights this Friday, and so it'll be the same kind of scenario, but the lights will be up through end of November. So it'll be an opportunity for people to come and visit. And this time we're going to be doing lights all through the garden along with the building.
All right, nice.
Yeah.
And apparently you did that last year. I guess I didn't realize it.
We did. It was the first time, and it was really pretty at night. And so this year we're going a little further by incorporating the garden into it.
So, and I noticed on your website that it did require pre-ticketing, if you will. Was that to get into the museum as opposed to just going outside and looking at the lights?
Yeah, it's really just to visit the museum. We're advising people to do time tickets. That being said, about half the people that come are walk-ins. So we always have enough set aside for walk-ins. And it's just to make sure that we've got enough timing to be socially distanced for people.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you can come anytime for outside.
No.
All right, Jim, we're about 5 minutes in. I assume we got the vast majority. I'm guessing there'll be one or two more stragglers here a little bit later.
Okay. And by the way, Ann, Brian just spoke up. Brian's the president of our club.
Oh, hi, Brian.
Hi. Hard to wave whenever it makes the things disappear.
Right, your hand goes in and out of the background.
All right. Let me just provide some introduction for Ann here before we get started.
I was going to ask you to do that, Jim, so go right ahead.
And once she begins, I'm going to suggest we mute our mics just so there's no dog barking in the background or kids or wives or whoever that might interrupt the presentation itself. So keep yourselves muted. But by the same token, I've spoken to Ann. She's certainly willing to take questions during the course of the presentation. So feel free at any time to unmute yourself and ask a question. And she'll also be hanging around after her formal presentation for a Q&A period as well. So we told her she had up to an hour and a half or so. I'm not sure how long her presentation will be, but
It won't, I promise it won't be that long.
I'm sorry, what was that, Ann?
I promise it won't be that long.
Oh, okay, all right. All right, so let's see here. I've just got a short bio. Well, actually, it's not very short. She's been a busy person in her career, but just in way of introduction to her. Ann's a proven leader in the, I'm going to read this off a piece of paper. I did not memorize this, folks, sorry. Ann's a proven leader in the arts and cultural sector with demonstrated success in program development, community engagement, fundraising, strategic planning, research and evaluation, interpretive planning, staff mentorship. She holds an unwavering belief that the arts can improve lives and strengthen communities and should be accessible and celebrated for all. She received her BFA in photography from the Maryland Institute College of Arts and her MA in museum education from the University of the Arts. In 2018, she was appointed the director/CEO at the Westmoreland Museum of American Art, where she eliminated the suggestion donated policy, yay, and increased programs and partnerships by 80%. Prior to her appointment, she was the Director of Education and Research and Learning at Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art, which opened in 2011 in Bentonville, Arkansas. In addition, she has held leadership positions at the Durham Arts Council and Vero Beach Museum of Art. And it's probably not most recently, but in 2019, Ann served as the jurist for the Mr. Rogers Fine Arts Exhibition at La Trobe Art Center. And with that, Ann, you can take over.
Hey, great. Well, thank you all for having me. I am going to share my screen. Okay, everyone can see that? Okay, great. There we go. From the beginning. Okay. So as Jim said, I am Ann Craybill. I am the director and CEO at the Westmoreland Museum of American Art. I started in August 2018. I am new to the area, and that's been a lot of fun because I think there's so many people that have lived here for so long that having an outsider come in and see things in different ways has been really fun for the community. I am only the third director of the Westmoreland in its history, so I follow some very big footsteps. Judy O'Toole was there for just over 25 years, and prior to her appointment, Dr. Chu. So if you're familiar, that's very unusual in museums. Usually the average tenure is about 10 years. So I was going to share a little bit about my background. As Jim said, I have a bachelor's in photography, but my career path has gone in a very different direction than that degree. And then talk a little bit about how I evaluate if I'm judging an art show, and specifically photography. Which I don't do very often. So I know that that was kind of the premise of my talk, but it's not, I'm going to talk a little bit about it, but it's something that I apply more so to evaluating exhibitions for the museum. And so I'll talk a little bit about taking that same kind of practice and applying it towards an exhibition that we might bring in. So that's me on my high school field trip. A little bit of a rebel. Don't pay any attention to those cigarettes there. But I grew up in Towson, just outside of Baltimore, and this was actually my photo field trip. So you can see all of my friends have their cameras there. Whoops. And these would have been like, standard 35 millimeter Canon. We were just so psyched if we got like a wide angle lens, to be able to use. They had converted one of the restrooms in our high school into the dark room. So we would develop our film. We would, go into the dark room and process on mostly, black and white, experimented a little bit with color, but didn't have the most, up-to-date darkroom facility then. But I got the bug, right? So in high school, I was really, really artistic, much less so than other subjects. And so I decided that I was going to go to art school. And I ended up going to the Maryland Institute College of Art and had to declare a major. So my practice was not only photography, but painting and sculpture and, ceramics, bookmaking. I took a lot of classes, and then finally they said, you've got to, come down on something. And so I decided to pursue photography, which led me to study with a professor named Anthony Aziz. And he actually has an artistic partnership, Aziz and Kuchar. So this is two artists. This is back in the mid 1990s. And so this is when Photoshop enters the scene. And artists are starting to push the boundaries of Photoshop and what it can do. This was also, I think, unfortunate because when this series came out, so did the movie The Matrix. Do you remember? With the covered up mouth and, the kind of skin. And so I think for Anthony, people thought that maybe he took it from The Matrix, but I think it was just a sign of the time that everybody was kind of experimenting with this new technology. So here he is in very large format, because you can imagine to print these things that large. He's using a large format camera and he's manipulating them in Photoshop, which is a feat in the mid 90s. So there were so many steps, which I'll talk about in a minute as well. And so I certainly became very intrigued by incorporating Photoshop into my artistic practice. Anthony went on to continue to do things that were still incorporating Photoshop, but were much more subtle in the kind of use of the tool. And so you can see here, these beautiful rooms are actually overlaid with skin. So literally images of somebody's skin that he photographed and then put on top of these spaces. So he continues to practice today, but obviously his practice has shifted quite a bit from the 90s when people were using this. For me, in my artistic practice, this required a large format camera. So I would use usually 4x5 because you had to have something that was, had tight enough of a grain that it could be blown up that large, but also large enough with a tight enough grain that you could take your zip disc that costs $10 or $10 per disc, right? So you'd buy 10 of them for $100. They store a whole 100 megabytes of data. You would manipulate your negative. You would then get it on your zip disk. You would then go take it to the service bureau that would then output it to another negative that you could then use to print. So the process was incredibly labor intensive, incredibly expensive. But I loved it. I loved manipulating these things. I printed in color. And unfortunately, I lost everything I've ever done in a move. So all I have left is these little slides, which now in this day and age, I don't have a scanner to actually scan the little slides. But I was very interested in creating still lives that really examined identity. So I created a kind of canned food series, but in the canned food was actually like ingredients of DNA. And so I would manipulate the labels and I would manipulate the contents using Photoshop. Then I decided that making a living as a photographer or an artist is just really hard. And I did not have, it wasn't even the talent. I would say I did not have the discipline. I did not have the business savvy. I did not have the networking and that kind of extrovert that I think is really important to be a successful artist. But I always, always believed in the power of art and education. And I ended up getting my first job at the Walters Art Museum in Baltimore, which introduced me to this whole world of learning in art museums. And I decided I really wanted to pursue my graduate degree in museum education. And so I went on to the University of the Arts and understood the power of connecting people with objects. And I think I always kind of compare it to, I started pre-med. I decided not to become a doctor, but I still wound up in the medical field, right? So I started as an artist. I decided I am not going to be an artist, but I'm still very much in the arts field. Very passionate about connecting people with incredible works of art and having really relevant, wonderful experiences with those. So then I went to the Norton Museum of Art in West Palm Beach, Florida. And that was my first real museum gig post-graduate school. And from there, I moved to the Vero Beach Museum of Art, became their director of education. And that's something that you'll find in the museum world, that generally to move up, you move out. So that's why I've been in a lot of places in my career, because I am ambitious and have always wanted to, be promoted. But that does require that you go to different institutions and oftentimes different states. So my biggest leap was moving to Arkansas. I told my mother-in-law that I had an interview at Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art in Bentonville, Arkansas, and she went and got a child's puzzle because she wasn't really sure exactly where Arkansas even was on the map. And when I learned more about this project, I was so excited to be a part of it. In 2011, Crystal Bridges opened, and this was the dream of Alice Walton, who you may know of as the heiress to Walmart. And she wanted a world-class art museum, and she was a passionate collector of American art specifically in her hometown of Bentonville, Arkansas. So this is where she grew up. It's where Walmart currently is headquartered. The project took about 7 years to actually build, but did open November 11th, 2011 to the public. It is, to date, received more than 6 million visitors and now has arts campuses all over the area. There's arts projects, bike trails. The area just became a complete boom town, and I think Crystal Bridges really was the seed for that. As part of my experience there, I did a random control trial study evaluating the effects of field trips on young people. And I was really interested in this because early in my career at the Norton Museum of Art, even if I had funding, I had a really hard time convincing school administrators that visiting art museums was important. And it was because they did not want to pull the seat time away from students, and it was because they'd never been offered any evidence about why this really matters, how this makes a difference. So I partnered with the University of Arkansas. They had a team of researchers there, and we basically studied almost 11,000 students and randomly assigned half of the students to come on a field trip and half of them to get delayed treatment. And this worked because we were a new museum, everybody wanted to come, and we essentially had a virgin population. Kids had never come to an art museum before unless they had maybe lived in another state, and the probability would have been equal on each side to wash out. And what we found was that students that came not only remembered the experience and actually learned things about the works of art, but they also showed increases in critical thinking when they were reading about works of art and writing about works of art. And they showed increases when we'd had scales that looked at tolerance. So are they more open to ideas that are maybe different than their own? And then historical empathy. So are they able to actually put themselves into the shoes of somebody else and imagine a time unlike their own? And so that was really, really exciting. And all of a sudden we now had very rigorous research to be able to show to administrators, this is why this matters. And this is why pulling these kids out of the seat matters. Maybe it doesn't translate to a grade, but it translates to all these other outcomes that we know are proven to help with further success in later life. So then I, as you know, from Crystal Bridges came here, and I was asked to talk a little bit about what kinds of parameters and guidelines do I use when I'm evaluating photography. And so one of the first things I do ask in an exhibition or a juried show is, are there parameters, are there guidelines? And if so, did the artist even respond to the call? And if they did, how uniquely did they respond to the call? And I just pulled up an example of a call that I thought was kind of interesting. This is a call for photography for an exhibition called Alone Together is a Paradox. 2020 has both united and divided the world. There are schisms within our culture that are ever widening. Simultaneously, people are joining together in mass to protest injustice. Wearing a mask can be seen as a simple gesture of kindness towards others, yet may also entice fighting. What does it mean to be alone? What does it mean to be together? What does that look like? How have you felt alone? How have we come together? How has the artist reacted to this call? So that's the first thing I'm going to look at, is just what are the parameters of this call? Then if there are no parameters, so the Fred Rogers is an example, that was just a very wide open call. So then I'm going to be looking at just the uniqueness of the concept that the artist is bringing. Those are the most difficult to evaluate because the work is so varied. And it's very difficult to objectively say one approach, especially when you're looking across media, is more unique than another approach. And you have no parameters or thematic kind of concept to weight that against. And then I'm going to be looking at the overall creativity in the response. And then of course you're looking at, the technical and the artistic excellence. So in photography, this is, the use of contrast, the use of color, if there's color, the depth of field, the grain, the composition, the exposure. But for me, it really just gets to the gestalt of the experience. And so it's not enough to simply have a kind of rubric that very systematically tries to quantify this, because art isn't a rubric where you can really just say, oh, 5 points for technical merit, 5 points for artistic, although, they really try to break that down in grant making process. But really it's the very personal experience that you have when you have that encounter with a work of art. And that's why it is sometimes so objective and really difficult to say, this is how I judge something. So I wanted to talk a little bit about photography at the Westmoreland and using some of those standards in deciding if we're going to bring a temporary exhibition. You may know we don't have a large photography collection. We do have a little bit. We do have a nice collection of Teenie Harris black and white photography. And then we have a few more recent acquisitions. But this was a temporary exhibition you may have seen called Emigration, Immigration, Migration. And this was 5 artists responding to people who have either emigrated, immigrated, or migrated to the United States. These are 2 examples of those, quite large. And these were all photographs of regional residents. So recent immigrants to the Pittsburgh region. You can see this wonderful image of a dad and his daughter and how they recreate. This was a temporary exhibition by Sue Abrams. And these were incredibly powerful, very much in response to the recent loss of a loved one. And so you can see, even though it's just got this stillness, it's also quite explosive. Even though in the leaf, it seems as though it's, actually decaying in front of your eyes, the way that it kind of hangs there. And she had a lot of different images of plant life that were doing very similar things to this. And then I'm really sorry that I didn't put this in, but did folks come to see the Mingled Visions exhibition, which would have been the photographs of Edward Curtis and Will Wilson?
My wife and I were there, Ann.
Oh, okay, great. So that's an example of a recent photo exhibition that we had. Edward Curtis, as you may know, he documented Native American life west of the Mississippi, really in response to the idea that indigenous communities were going to be eradicated through cultural loss and through this forced migration. They were a little problematic, though, in that sometimes he would often stage the photographs. Sometimes you would see people from different tribes wearing the same white shirt or holding things that weren't, actually from their tribe. And so there's a contemporary artist, Will Wilson, and we did acquire one of his works. We're so excited about that. But he created the Critical Indigenous Photographic Exchange, where he actually photographs Indigenous people today in the same format of tintyping that Edward Curtis did. So photography is definitely something that we're continuing to explore. Our collection is, again, not so large in photography, so in our temporary exhibition program is where we're really doing that. So the next photography exhibition that I wanted to share with you is called Border Cantos. This is Sonic Borders, Sight and Sound Explorations from the Mexican-American Border. Richard Mizrak is a photographer based in California, and he works very, very large format, not necessarily large format film like I did back in the 90s, because digital photography has come such a long way. He's able to use a digital camera, but I would say this is probably about 5 feet by 6 feet, so mural size, quite substantial. And you can see these huge vistas. He's very interested in human interaction with human-made borders. So this is obviously the wall, a series that he started back in 2000. And sorry, every time I say something like that sounds like Siri, my phone turns on. So series. This was a collaboration that he started back in 2008 and worked with a sound artist to do, which I'll talk a little bit more about. But he traveled to all these different sites on the Mexican-American border, documented that space, did some incredibly just haunting night scenes. This is a water station that would be out there for people that may be crossing into the country. Oftentimes, people don't make it because of dehydration, so they've placed these water stations in different places. And then this is a very strange thing that he encountered called an effigy, and nobody really knows what they're about. Are they a warning? Are they, nobody really knows why they're there or placed there, but you can see they kind of look like scarecrows with clothing on them. So he collected things like this or ephemera that he found, and he sent it to an artist, Guillermo Galindo, a sound artist, who then took these ephemera, took these things and actually created musical instruments. So this is an instrument that will be in the exhibition that you will actually be able to hear. They play in symphony with each other. It's about 15 of them. So you'll encounter them in a room and you'll see some of the things in Richard's photography that comprise these objects. And you'll encounter them sort of orchestrally. They'll play together electronically. This is another example of one of a very large instrument that he made from an actual piece of border wall that Richard had sent to him. So that will be opening in May. It was supposed to open last May, however, didn't make it because of COVID. So we pushed everything down about a year. And then we're looking at some other, for a couple years out, some other potential photography exhibitions. And we are always taking photography exhibitions for our regional gallery, the Robert Shaw Gallery. I know Jim's been in touch with our curatorial assistant about submitting an application. So we encourage everybody to do that as well. I will take questions now that I can stop sharing so we can see each other.
Don't be shy. Well, so Ann, I've got a question. Unfortunately, it also will disclose my background as an engineer and not an English major. You used a word that, to be honest with you, I just am not familiar with. Gestalt?
Yeah, so it's like your overall just like impression of something, right? So it's sort of like all of your senses. How are all of your senses activated? And your emotions. When have you ever like gone on a trip? I'm looking at the mountains behind you, and suddenly you come over that clearing, and you look down, and it's just that overall. So
Understood. Good explanation. Thank
it's hard to make a rubric.
you.
I have a couple of things that had come to mind while I was listening to you. Is from the museum perspective, it seems to me that they're also just seeking large prints. In other words, if I was going to go with an exhibition and I give you a bunch of 16 by 20s, I don't know how well they would be accepted or reviewed by a museum. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So it depends on where you are in our museum that you'll sort of see different sizes. In that new cantilevered space, those ceilings are 16 feet high. And in the postmodern gallery, you'll see two teeny Harrises right now. And it is really on those walls, they don't read as well. So it's not that we would necessarily be judging something based on its size, but we do want to be able to put something in a space that it doesn't get enveloped by the wall, right? Or swallowed up by the wall. The Robert Shaw Gallery features artworks of all different sizes. So we recently, those Sue Abrams, those were a little bit larger, but we also do very intimate works and scale in that. So that's a really great place. And then our works on paper gallery, the same thing. Most works on paper are smaller. So bigger's not necessarily better. We think that there's some beautiful packages and small intimate works. So it's not going to factor into whether or not we think we would want to exhibit it at the museum.
Okay, thanks. I can continue with it. Well, go ahead. If somebody else had something to say, go ahead.
Just like art is subjective, is not photography also subjective based on the judge like yourself, whether you like a photograph or not?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how you take that out of the equation. It's just because to me, art is emotional. Art is an experience. So I think you can try and make it as objective as possible in judging, but at the end of the day, it really does come down to that subjective experience. That being said, I think, anybody who's evaluating work has to understand the technical prowess that goes behind something. So it can't just be somebody coming up and saying, I think that's really beautiful. I mean, they really do have to have an understanding of how that was achieved. So it's kind of, it's definitely not a science though, in terms of how you can evaluate.
Thank you.
Sure.
Does the Westmoreland have a philosophy on photographic acquisitions? Is there an area you try and acquire for?
We don't, and it's because we have so many gaps in our collection already. So many of you may know that we didn't even start collecting contemporary art or post 50s, really. So post 1950 until 2015. If we had any photography, it would have been earlier photography. You know, that's why we do have some teeny Harrises. And so to develop a strategy is really tough because it's kind of, where do you start? You know, along with trying to fill the gaps that we have in our painting collection. We're really missing a lot of things in social realism. We're missing a lot of things in, again, post 50s. So if you have thoughts, if you have ideas about what you think would be, I'd love to hear them, what you think would be a good strategy.
You had mentioned that it was very difficult to become a professional photographer. How does one break through the barriers right now with so much photography being done, so much exposure with Instagram, with all these medias? How does one break in so that they become well known, like you said, a Curtis or a Wilson? You know, what's the process? I mean, not that I'm going to be one, but I'm just saying, how do you do that? How does one become to the upper echelons of photography?
I mean, I think one of the most important things you have to do is exhibit, right? So you've got to get, you know, submit to as many exhibits as you possibly can so you can get the work out there. I can't tell you how many artists I've just discovered from going to gallery shows that I maybe never would have discovered before. You know, having social media as a platform is really important too. So, you know, being able to leverage all of that to be able to get your work out there. And then, you know, a lot of these artists have day jobs. So Will Wilson is a professor at the University of New Mexico. You know, you've got to do something else that affords you the ability to continue to do that work. When you get to a point where you could perhaps get representation with a gallerist, that's really going to help. I mean, that's their job, is getting your art out there and getting it sold. But again, that's going to require exhibiting. So just pursuing any and all opportunities.
Thank you.
And I had a follow-up question, John, regarding print sizes. At our shows, every once in our venues typically have been local libraries. We've been at the Greensburg Civic Center. In some of the exhibition spaces are rather limited, and we end up having to stack our photos anywhere from 2 or 3 high. And Brian's smiling there, I can see. But I am curious. So basically in the museum, most of the galleries you have are stacked 1 high, if you will. With the one exception, and boy, I'd hate to change your mind on this, it's the room with, I call it the technology gallery, which is my favorite space in the museum. But oh my God, some of them are up to the ceiling.
It's overwhelming.
Do you intend to keep it that way?
So that's a really, that's a great question. So Barbara Jones, our chief curator, is one of those curators who says more is more. And so she walks into an exhibition, and if it's like a gallery salon hang and it's got so many objects, she's just in love. For me, I think it's a little overwhelming, and it doesn't allow you to have that gestalt I was talking about, that one-on-one relationship. You can do a good salon hang, but we are going to be reevaluating that space. We actually have a 2-year grant to reinterpret and reinstall the entire permanent collection of the museum. So that room, those scenes of industry, those are so near and dear to people because it really speaks to the history of this region, that I would love to, instead of having everything all up at once, keep it a more dynamic space where we actually rotate art more frequently, so that every time you come back, you get to see something new, including some beautiful photography. And it's like 20 feet up on the wall right now of these, you know, great facilities that this was the last moment before they were torn down. These incredible steel facilities that were documented via photography. So my answer to you is no, we are not keeping it like that, but it's going to take us a little time as we develop a plan.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
How does the admission-free policy, how has it worked out?
Very well. So before COVID happened, our attendance had increased by about 30%, which is great.
Wow.
It was a signal to us that even though we technically had a suggested donation policy, it was still a very real barrier for people. And then really interestingly, in a post-COVID, well, we're not, I guess we're in COVID, right? In an in-COVID world, we've seen a kind of increase in folks coming from Allegheny County. So I think people may be trying to escape the city, a little more time on their hands, trying to discover new things, since they can't maybe go to restaurants as frequently. Kind of look at us as let's venture out there. It's a risk-free adventure. So it's been very good. We've been able to collect about 1/3 of the revenue that we lost from that just in passive donations. So just people coming in and dropping funds into the admission box that we have. And then we've seen increases in membership because our members now believe that this is a philanthropic activity rather than a transactional, right? So it's not about like, what discount do I get or what free shows do I get to come into, but it's about making sure that the Westmoreland is in the public's interest. And, you know, it is for the public, similar to how a library operates, which is really how I feel like museums should operate.
So of the Edward Curtis Teenie Harris exhibition, is it Teenie Harris, is that correct?
We have a couple of Teenie Harrises on view right now that you can see. And then the Edward Curtis exhibition we had in April of 2019. It was
Right.
Curtis and Will Wilson.
But you had some Polaroids, did you not, with the Edward Curtis exhibition? Large scale prints?
So that was the Will Wilson. Yeah, they were large scale tintypes that he then,
Right.
yeah, digitized. And then if you had the iPad,
Yeah.
Julie then animated on the iPad.
Mm-hmm.
The sitter actually talked to you.
Did you acquire any of those prints?
Yes, we got one. I'll send it to Jim and I'll send the app too so you can see him talk.
Did you acquire one because that is where you ran out of cash, or is that the only one you wanted?
I mean, one, because we don't have a huge acquisition fund.
Yeah.
We really loved it so much, but also I think we were unsure of what would we do if we had more than one? Like, how would we then exhibit it?
Sure.
Instead of even exhibiting it as photography, we're probably going to exhibit it more as portraiture. So it would be alongside other portraits and other media as well.
Mm.
And I'll say, photography is one of those things where you can get one gift because people who collect, they collect, right? They collect a lot.
Yeah.
But to start just some here and some there, because we adhere to the 1 year on, 10 years off rule for light, because it is so fugitive in terms of its light sensitivity. We don't want to acquire a lot of things that then just don't see the light of day in the vault. We need to be able to acquire enough that we could rotate it out frequently enough. So if you know anybody that has a nice stash photography that they are wanting to donate, that's the kind of gift we'd be looking for to start a collection.
Well, you might get overrun by our members. I'm not sure.
Right.
On that note, is it possible that perhaps we have a photographer's choice once a month? Perhaps the museum could have a spot for a photo from one of our groups to showcase that, hey, in Westmoreland County, we have very good photographers. Is that within the realm of possibility to just have one small little spot for our photos to be uplifted? To be programmed and framed and put on the wall to say, hey, this comes from Westmoreland County, from Jim or Brian or from Beth or whoever it is. Just again, showcase that Westmoreland does have photography, a very talented group of photographers, not just out west or anywhere else.
What I would suggest you do instead, because it's probably hard for us to do just once a month, but what I would suggest instead is coming up with an exhibition of these great photographers. And Bonnie, our curatorial assistant, can help, and actually having an exhibition in our Robert Shaw Gallery, which can hold a substantial amount of artwork. It's the first gallery that visitors see when they come in, you know, and we do everything from the vinyl, you know, it's professionally done, the vinyl intro panel, all of the labels, if you have texts that you know, artist statements for each work of art, and helping with matting and framing. So I would go that route instead of one per month. I'd do a full-blown exhibition.
Bob, you must, hey, Bob, I'm sorry, you must have missed, but we are preparing a proposal
Okay.
for what they call a pop-up exhibition. That would be
Okay,
nice.
good. Okay.
Yeah, and that would be up for a month.
Mhm.
Is that the lower level gallery on the parking lot side?
Yes, so right when you walk in and you have the front desk, it's the gallery right to the right.
Yeah.
It's really a nice location because
Oh, absolutely.
once you stop at the desk, it's literally the first gallery you go through. You can't miss it.
Yeah, you know, the question of scale is an interesting one. I think most people are afraid to put their print at 40 by 60 inches. I mean, that's psychologically quite a challenge, and most people are reluctant to do it.
Do some people have 40 by 60 inches?
Had one,
Yeah.
Rex was waving his hand.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, that's, again, working with our curators about
Yeah,
how to frame that in conversation with smaller works, which they are good at, and also maybe utilizing, if there is one large work, you know, utilizing more of a vertical wall that would hold that artwork on its own. But it has been done. I mean, we've had a exhibition there where it was floor to ceiling because she literally vinyled on the wall her installation.
John, when you asked your first question, you said you might have some others. This might be a good time.
I don't know. I've been thinking from our last meeting that we had, there was a lot of dialogue and among the photographers on 3 different topics of how to address, let's say, the photographic medium. And we were wondering how judges look at this. So let me give you an example. If you walk into a show that you're going to jury, would you lean toward things of what I'll call pictorialism, where photography is more an extension of painting, or straight photography where it's photojournalism or documentary photography, or fine art photography where the photographer is just using photography as a way to express their art and vision? If you want to speak to any of those topics, I think we might find that interesting.
Sure. So that's really tough, right? Because pictorialism versus, you know, more of a documentary, like a Teenie Harris style photography, even, you know, like a Ouija type of thing, even dovetailing into journalistic photography, are just so different. So I would go back to, again, what was the call, right, in that exhibition? And if there was if the call was thematic but not in terms of its technical approach, then I really am going to go to the technical and artistic merit of each within their own right? So not trying to let my bias for if I like the soft edges of pictorialism versus the documentary style. So really looking at that. And then of those, within those media, which one is the most original? So I would do my very best not to let that bias trickle in, so that I'm judging them on their own merit. That being said, that's really challenging, right? Because we all do have the things that we gravitate towards. And so
I've been in exhibitions, and when I looked at the images that were picked by the judge, it became apparent to me that they were favoring one of the three versus the other work that photographers had. The majority were in one of those three categories, and I'm saying I got to wake up and understand what's going on here, and that's why I brought the topic up.
Right. And it's, I mean, this isn't what I do. So I would never say like I'm a professional judge or anything like that. I mean, I've done it a few times, but like this isn't unique to just art exhibitions. Look at the history of art and trends in museums. The market shapes it. Individual collectors shape it. Gallerists shape it. Curators shape it. And so sometimes you're just at the mercy of like whatever that trend is. But by no means does that mean you should conform. You should pursue what it is that makes you excited about photography.
One of the issues that we had last week was when you take a native photograph out of the camera, unaltered, and then you take it to Photoshop and do some alterations. As a judge, how do you judge photographs that have been altered by Photoshop or Lightroom? Because again, if you want to be a purist, you would just take the photo and just put it on a print and that's it without any doctoring. So how as a judge what's your latitude using Photoshop or Lightroom or any other post-processing program?
I mean, I think if the photograph's no good to begin with, no amount of filtering or photoshopping is all of it. So, I don't have an issue with artists using Photoshop, particularly as a tool, as an artistic tool. If it's just cleaning up dust or something, you're not going to know it anyway. But if they're using it in a way that really is just unique, as the examples that from, my early days of Photoshop and my professor did that really kind of push the boundaries of photography, I think that's really worth exploring. But simply like putting it through a Celadon filter to try and bump up the color or the contrast, you'll be able to see if it's a crap photo underneath. So does that help?
So in other words, it's not uncommon or not out of the realm to use Photoshop as a means of enhancing the photograph.
Yeah, especially if it's really as a means of enhancing what is already a very good photograph.
Okay.
Because it's simply, if you imagine in black and white and you had a spot, you're going in there with a little brush and you're dotting each little piece of grain, to make that go away. So this is just another tool, I think, to create something that, the artist at the end of the day is very happy with.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. John, were you going to say something else?
I think I was, but I forgot about it.
Well, I had a follow-up again to John's question, as opposed to the subject matter of the photograph itself. This could be my imagination, and it's not like I've gone to a lot of photo exhibits. But do you think there's a slight bias or any bias at all towards black and white photographs as opposed to color?
I mean, I think it depends on the era in which you're looking at, right? So contemporary photography, for the most part, people are pushing the boundaries of color. And I think that's where a lot of the artists are working. And, so really kind of post 70s on. I think if you are looking at more historical, color wasn't accepted as an artistic art form until the 70s within photography. It was really thought of as just being commercial or amateurish. So, I think people are going to be more biased to black and white then, because that's really what artists were pursuing. Certainly there's contemporary artists today that are working in black and white, like, Sally Mann comes to mind. But I think it's more common to see really big and color, like large format, mural size and color. So I would definitely say that the art world, and particularly the museum world, is biased towards that. if it's not a historical collection.
Thanks.
Sure.
Somebody else has got to have a question out there.
Well, let me add one other point. Jim, we were talking about this again at the last meeting. Maybe we can get Ann's point of view. We were talking about, and I think Bob brought it up, about people using Photoshop on their images. And we were looking at where some of this is headed in some of the software of Photoshop and some other things, where they're actually going into artificial intelligence kind of settings now, where, let me give you an example. If I took a photo, so let's say like the one behind me, and I didn't like it, I could change all the sky. I could delete it and put in a different sky. Again, it could be done from an artistic point of view, as I'm doing this. I was wondering how you feel about some of the more advanced features that are coming down the line, and maybe how people in your area of the world will react to that.
I mean, I think I know some of the tools you're talking about. So in social media, you'll see a lot of like a sea of surfers, right? And then it'll swipe, and it'll, to make it look better, it gets rid of all of the other surfers except for the 2 surfers in the middle. Or some filters for skin and things like that. The problem with filters is it's going to look the same. So there's just not going to be anything, you know, the treatment of that is going to look uniform across the board. So there's not going to be much artistic merit in it. You're going to recognize, just like in Instagram, you recognize the different filters that they have. So there may be some initial or early use of those tools that kind of get by it, but pretty soon people are going to understand that this is something that was just kind of generically applied. I think it's the artists that manipulate those tools in unique ways. Those are the ones that are going to have, you know, lasting impact. It's the ones that really push it to those boundaries, or do something with those filters that are not the intended use. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, not the commercial application of it. So I think that any kind of like quick fix is still going to remain a very, very kind of amateur social media tool, not necessarily commercial or professional or artistic.
Anybody else?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
I've been gone for a while, so I don't know. I guess everything's working. I was in portrait photography for quite a long time, and doing families and weddings and babies and little boys and girls at schools. In the subject of Photoshop, it was not important to the client. As a matter of fact, the last thing in the world you wanted to do is to have left some sort of artifact that showed that you were not very delicate with how you handled the correction. So there's a side of using Photoshop or any other editing system that you don't want anybody to know about that part of it. The other cries out. I did all of this artwork. I did all of this unique presentation. So you can have a presentation that's color, you can have a presentation that's black and white. The idea that you have a show is that you're telling a story, and most likely all of the work that you present in that show doesn't necessarily have to be in the same vein, but most likely you're going to show a type of artwork that appeals to you and that you want the public to see. That's where you live. So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that when you do a presentation, most likely it's going to be one in the other, and you're not going to want all of the manipulation to show. In another case, you may, and that's my story.
No, I think that's exactly right. It's the intentionality and how you're using it as a tool. You know, photography, like anything else, is a technological tool that advances over time, and Photoshop is now one tool in that arsenal, that toolkit of what photographers have at their disposal. So you intentionally use those tools to get to the point that, you know, you want your artwork to be, and just like Rex said, those stories that you're trying to tell.
Right. What was it? The phrase that I'm trying to remember in my mind was that the artwork isn't finished until it's where it's going to be shown. In other words, if you're doing two-dimensional work, it's in its frame and it's on the wall. That's when it's done. It's not done until it's on the wall in its frame. And even to the artist, he may look at it, she may look at it and say, no, I really wanted to do something else, but it's on the wall. So that's the work. So there.
Right, like that Banksy painting that sold at auction, and when it sold and the gavel went down, it went through the shredder.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Out of curiosity, at the museum, who decides what to be placed on the walls? You and the curator?
Yeah, I'd say for the permanent collection, it's really Barbara's oversight, but we are now really now exploring cross-departmentally this reinstallation process. So we brought in education, marketing, our frontline staff, because they're the ones who see the visitors and how they act, you know, with the art and how they interact with the art. So we're having much more global conversations around that. And then for temporary exhibitions, usually Barbara's bringing an exhibition to me, or I'm bringing an exhibition to her. Then we have a conversation with our senior team around it. And then sometimes we'll bring the collections committee into that. But usually it's at that senior team level, because, you know, we're looking at diversity of exhibitions. And, you know, so we would try to not have like a photography exhibition back to back with another photography exhibition, the same way contemporary painting back to back. So we're looking for diversity we offer. And then we're also looking at time of year. We're looking at, you know, sponsorship. Can we get sponsored for this? We're looking at, do we not care if we can't get sponsored for this? We just think it's a really important exhibition. We need to do it. So all of those conversations are at play when we're making those decisions. And we try to be about 2 years out.
So you don't flip a coin then?
No, unless you get COVID. And we sort of flipped a coin when we pushed our exhibitions out a year. We are going to be closing the current exhibition, African American Art in the 20th Century, in mid-January. And we've partnered with the University of Pittsburgh, their graduate students, and they are pulling stuff from the vault, and they are creating an exhibition that they're sort of temporarily titling Playful Patterns at Play, something like that.
Is that existing work or is that new work?
This is all existing work from our vault. So they're bringing things that I've never seen in person. And it's great because it gives a chance to have new scholarship and new eyes on it. And it gives them a very real world curatorial experience of what it means to shape an exhibition.
How big is your vault? Is it in the premises, on the premises?
Yes, so we have 2 vaults. I would say the square footage combined is probably around 2,000 to 2,500 square feet. So, and one is specifically geared towards larger works, post-50s, contemporary, modern and contemporary, and another is for more historical.
Are these treated rooms? I mean, with metal panels and temperature and all that?
Yeah, so the whole museum has to be temperature controlled, 70 degrees, 50% humidity, and we get alarms if it goes past a certain percentage in either direction. And that's really our not only our reaccreditation with the American Alliance for Museums, but people don't want to loan to an institution that can't ensure the safety of the work. So it's really to make sure that we can bring in outside artwork. And then the rooms themselves have, you know, the big metal hanging racks that are on wheels, the shelves that are on wheels. Everything is electronically secure, so we only have a certain amount of people that can go down there. But that being said, our director of exhibitions and collections, Doug Evans, is super generous with showing people in the vault. If there's artworks, particularly photography or works on paper that you would want to see from our collection, you can make an appointment with him and he'll actually take you down there.
Nice. Thank you.
Sure.
What's on the museum's acquisition list?
Well, lots of things. We'd take anything from a Thomas Hart Benton to a Jackson Pollock to an Andy Warhol. So we have lots of individual artists, but really what we look at is gaps. So that, as I mentioned, social realism is a big gap for us. Regionalism is a big gap for us. So looking at those works that are created, in the 1930s and 1940s, Depression, post-Depression era, anything after 1950s, we have a big need for. You can imagine what we could have acquired in 1950 from contemporary work at the time. All that stuff is just blue chip now. It's very, very expensive. So we're really dependent on gifts for that. And then we're looking at acquiring regional art for artists that we want to elevate their careers and have them in conversation with our permanent collection. Similar to the regional art of the scalp level landscapes, we want to be able to do that for working artists today. But yeah, we have an incredible collection, but it's small in comparison to other institutions. It's about 3,000 objects, maybe 4,000 when you consider all the works on paper. So we're constantly looking and we're constantly engaging with donors who want to leave gifts and trying to build that out.
Yeah. The museum in Greensburg, I think, which is 18,000 residents, seems to me to be pretty good.
Yeah, it's phenomenal that a town like Greensburg has a museum like this, and the Palace Theater, and a symphony.
Yeah.
Volumes to, the value that folks there and surrounding place on culture. It's great, and a university too, actually. So yeah, it's been quite a treat for me coming into sort of a small town, but having all of those amenities.
Any other questions, comments?
Just one. I wondered if you're still taking photographs, and what type of photography do you personally enjoy doing?
I have not taken photographs in the longest time. I did get, one of my first digital cameras, and I tried. Honestly, I think if I were to make art again, I'd go to painting. I feel like my photography career has come to an end, and now it's spent, using my phone, taking pictures of my kids.
Yeah.
It's
need to dig out the Rolex.
I know. I still have a medium format Pentax, and I remember it was such a precious thing when I bought it. And I think it was, at the time, $2,000, and now you can get them on eBay for like $300. It's crazy.
And I'm not sure you noticed, but Beth just gave you 2 thumbs up.
Oh. Thank you. Thanks, Beth.
I shoot Pentax mostly, and including medium format.
Oh, great.
I still use my 645 a fair amount, so. And a 4x5.
Yeah, I love medium format because they're so much more nimble than 4x5, but
yeah.
Then what you can do with a 4x5 is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I'll toss my inventory that I still have in a Mamiya RB67, 6x7 centimeter format.
Wow.
Rotatable back, even with the largest back on the camera, 24 exposures.
Wow.
Okay, well, Ann, let me thank you from all of the group
Absolutely.
here online. We really appreciate the presentation. I do have one last, I guess, a request, if you will.
Sure.
Our club actually we do monthly photo walks. Well, although in 2020, we haven't been doing it because of COVID. But you may or may not be aware, we actually had one of our monthly walks at the museum last year.
I didn't know that.
And the one part of it that was really nice when we were setting it up was to find out that your policy on photography was go for it. And I hope you don't change that policy going forward, because we really appreciated being able to go into a museum and take some photographs, because a lot of museum, you just can't do that.
Yeah, our permanent collection, you can always photograph. And then as long as we have permission from our lenders for temporary, we'll allow that as well. So it's
Good to know.
sure.
And
Right,
one
Go
last
ahead,
point
John.
here. Yeah. I stepped away for a second and I looked at my archives. And if you ever do go back to photography, I have
Some
I
zip.
have the zip discs here. So
Can
there.
you imagine they were so precious? 100 megabytes.
Yeah.
Oh,
They're still in my archive. If you need them, come back for them.
Thanks so much.
But John, do you still have the drives, the zip drives to read them?
Yes, I still have the zip disk drive for them if you need that too. It was just too big a box to bring over right now.
Well,
I do believe in my arsenal of boxes upstairs, I have a few zip disk and a couple zip drives as well. So
Well, Ann, thanks again so much. Hopefully we get to do some more work with you in the future. You're more than willing to stay on the call. This is our monthly meeting and we have a few business items, I think, to go through. But so anyway, you can decide, but we certainly appreciate you being on the call and making the presentation for us.
Oh, well, thank you all for inviting me. I think I'll leave you to your business. I can hear I have a almost 5-year-old and has been singing bedtime stories.
Yeah.
Go sneak a good night to him. But it was a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing your proposal for an exhibition.
Well, thank you.
And I
Thank you,
have
Ann.
one real quick question for you.
Sure.
We record these and post them on our YouTube channel for our members that didn't make it tonight and stuff like that. Is that okay if I go ahead and post that?
Yes, you have my permission.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure before I did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And we do appreciate you stopping by for this evening. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you all.
And I appreciate your giving approval because my electronic equipment wasn't working, so I apologize for being late.
All right. Take care, everybody.
All right,
Thank
thanks.
Thank
you.
Bye-bye.
thank you.
Goodbye.
That was good.
That was very good.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah.
Jim, thank you for getting that all set up and figured out and coordinated. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, but you
Thank
know
you.
what? Bob DeJesus, do you read the emails that we send out?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
And I remember that, but just, you know what? I had a colonoscopy today, okay? And so my mind is
No
all blank with
excuse.
sedation and all that, okay? So you got to
hey,
forgive me,
Bob, did you
Jim.
do your own colonoscopy?
No, I don't have the equipment to do self colonoscopy. So this was by another physician and all that. So, you know, the medication is still a little bit in the brain cells and kind of dull and all that. So you have to kind of forgive me and all that.
All righty, I forgive you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, I guess I should ask. I think that tonight is our November meeting. So, did anyone volunteer to be the president? Anybody at all?
No.
Anybody? Or any of
Brian.
the other offices? Did anyone volunteer?
I haven't heard anything from anybody.
Nope.
All right, I have not either. I haven't received any emails or anybody saying, yes, I want to help or I'll take that position or anything like that. So I guess that once again extends the offices of the officers for another year. So
We should probably have a non-officer second that motion.
I second that motion.
okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All
Look,
right.
I am not about to deal with another election right now.
This is a simple election, though. It's already done. I'm the only one that's
Quit counting.
I'm gonna challenge you, Brian.
I want the votes recounted because I
You won't count them unless there's
won,
names.
damn it.
The show at Feathers was good.
Yeah,
In
the
fact,
show at Feathers looks really good.
yeah, the quality of the photos is excellent.
Good to hear. I wasn't able to make it down there, but I seen some pictures of it, and the promotion of it from Feathers has been pretty good. I've seen
Yeah.
posts from
It's well hung.
Nice job, guys. Those of you that participated.
Well, the other thing, Brian, that a couple of us were talking about is of course, I don't have memorized like every photo that's been in our previous shows, the last 4 years or so that I've been in the club, but there seemed to be an awful lot of new photos
Yeah.
in the show. There weren't a whole lot of repeats.
Good.
Yeah. And mine are all digital
And the color.
and all color.
Who would have thought?
Have
I
you
know.
Yeah, unusual.
checked your temperature lately, or are you sick? Or okay?
It might be the only time.
Minor color as well.
Yeah.
Dennis, you
That
had a black and
reminds me-
white one there.
What's that?
You had a black and white one there.
No, I didn't.
Flower?
I have two colors.
Wasn't your
Who did
flower
the
black and
flower?
white?
Well, the black and white, the flower is sepia, so
Yeah.
I suppose it could be, it's monochrome.
Good deal. Good deal. I don't believe I had really anything else that we needed to speak about this evening that I know of.
I do. Can I mention something?
Absolutely.
I know at the show we were all talking, and I know that with COVID it's very difficult to get anywhere, but word was that it would be nice to have some sort of outing. I have no idea what that outing would be, but I know people would like to try to go somewhere to do some photos.
You mean a photo walk, Melissa?
Yeah.
Great. I'm glad to hear that. Where do we want to go?
I have no idea. That's what I just said. I don't know where it would be.
Well, what did we have scheduled for November?
I'm looking it up right now.
I think it was, you know what? It's Carnegie Museum of Art.
I do believe that was
At museums.
Yes.
What about the Frick?
I've never been there.
Me neither.
I've been there once. I don't know what they've got right now, though.
Yeah, the Frick has several rooms in their rotating collection, and then there's a permanent collection. But it's this nice small museum. I mean, it's not certainly as big as Westmoreland.
I don't know if they have restrictions on photography or not there. Something tells me in the back of my mind that we checked there once upon a time, but I could be wrong.
You can shoot outside there.
Yeah.
I know
did
that I went to a photography thing there, a photography exhibition, like early stuff. And I was able to take pictures with my cell. But I don't know if anybody would have cared if I used my real camera.
Right. Likewise, Beth, I was there and I took photos with my iPhone, and no one seemed to mind it. I mean, nobody came up and said, "Hey, you can't do that."
Yeah, I did the same thing. I used my iPhone, and those docents would have jumped on you if you weren't allowed, because they're very aware of what's happening.
We could do Phipps, Christmas show.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I know we keep going back, but I was going to say either Phipps or even the aviary. I don't know if anything's open or how they're doing that.
Well, Phipps is time tickets.
I think Frick is doing timed tickets too.
Or the zoo. I don't know if the zoo still is doing anything.
The zoo, even in, is it July-ish, I think, that Nate and I went, and they weren't doing timed tickets ahead of time.
Right.
It was because the crowds had been low enough that they were just,
Right.
See, Frick is doing time tickets, but they're free. There's no charge to go to the Frick Museum.
Yeah.
yeah.
What about the fairgrounds in Westmoreland County? Are they having their,
I haven't heard yet if they're going to allow you out of the car.
It opens in 9 days. Drive-through only display.
That's what I was afraid of with there.
Yeah.
yeah.
Because the 2020 season will be a drive-through only display.
The
Wave
zoo
to Santa and drop off your letter.
Isn't that nice? The zoo says that they're open and tickets can be purchased at the front gate or online.
Yeah.
How much is it for the zoo anymore? I don't remember.
Let me see here. I got their
18
website.
bucks.
$16.95 for an adult.
Yeah.
Well,
I
that's
know
not
the
as bad as I
weather's-
thought it would
The
be.
weather's uncertain this time of year, obviously, but doing something outdoors a lot of our members might feel more comfortable getting together outdoors as opposed to indoors.
Yeah, that's why I had mentioned even just the zoo. Just
The zoo's always fun anyway.
I mean, if it's bad weather, we don't have to go. We could do, but yeah, it's hard to tell.
Right now, the zoo is still under the fall time, which means that they are open from 9 to 4.
Yeah.
And I don't see anything about Saturdays or Sundays. They're closed on Thanksgiving and Christmas. What do you guys think?
Bedford Village has their Christmas thing going on now too.
Yeah, but every time I plan to go to Old Bedford Village, I only get like 2 people that show up to that.
Yeah.
If that. I don't know. I guess everyone's afraid to drive an hour.
Either one sounds good to me. The zoo sounds fine. The animals would probably be more active with the cooler weather. Might get some better shots.
Yeah, usually in the fall and in the spring is the best time to go to the zoo because they're out moving around more. It's up to you guys. Tell me what you want to do.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'd like to be a part of it all, but right now, I don't know from week to week what it's going to be. Like I have a surgical operation coming up on the 20th, I think. So, and I don't know how recovered I'll be after that. So, and right now I can't walk more than say across the house a couple times and I start to hurt. So it doesn't do me any good to say, hey, I'd like to do this and that because I don't know. I really would like to jump in and be a part of it, but I just can't. So just so
Right.
you know, I'd like to, but I can't.
Yeah.
It's a block, a surgical block is what it's called.
Looking at, you mentioned the Old Bedford Village. The only two events they have coming up are the Christmas Village on December 5th and December 12th.
I wouldn't mind going to the zoo. I just don't know when anybody would want to go.
I'm good for the zoo.
I'm good for the zoo. I think the only weekend to not do it would be Thanksgiving weekend.
I would agree with that.
I would think that would be the one more crowded time on a weekend. But the 21st, we've got time to plan for.
I could do the 21st.
I don't think I have anything on the calendar for that.
Saturday the 21st.
It's a Saturday.
I'd have to see if I can have the day off of work for me. That's all. I can go. It's just if I can have the day off of work, I'll have to ask.
Why not the 22nd?
Yeah, I'm just as open on the 22nd.
So the 22nd, I don't have to ask for work. I just go. So
Yeah.
I'm good for the 22nd.
I can do the 22nd. That's a new thing for me, saying I can go on Sundays.
Yeah, we could do the 22nd, I think.
okay. 22nd it is. Everyone else okay? Anyone else that's interested in going okay with that?
Yeah, it sounds good.
Good. Okay. We have to tell Annie so she can request off of work.
Does
Yeah.
she usually get Sundays off?
She seems to be lately, but we want to make sure.
Yeah, if you guys at the Feathers exhibition saw the gull image, Annie framed that. Did a nice job.
Oh, yeah.
She's going to be working overtime. So she's got, and it's going to start real soon where she's going to be putting in a lot of overtime.
Yeah.
It usually will start right after Thanksgiving, from then through the end of December, for retail working. And that was when I always had to start that overtime stuff.
Melissa, thanks for bringing that up.
What's that? Wanting to do an outing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just texted Annie.
Okay. What, I'm assuming we're going to meet there at 9 o'clock, since that'll be, yeah, that's their open time. Does that work for you guys? Or you want to meet at 10 o'clock? It's up to you guys.
I'm good with 9.
I'll catch up with you.
You'll show up when DL shows up, right?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, DL's usually good for 9:30, 9:45, 10.
11.
3:30. All right. Well, we'll say 9 o'clock, since that's the time that they open. We'll get there and get started and go from there. As always, my phone's on, so you can reach me if you need to find out where we're at, if you're running a little later or whatever.
I'll put it in the Sunday update,
Sounds good.
because that way everybody will have at least a week to know about it.
I did add the flare on Reddit today for the November Photographer's Choice, so you guys can start that if you choose. I got a few other updates on there to make yet, but I did get that one in there, so that's available now. I figured Jim would be yelling at me by now about that one.
It's never too early to start.
It's on there. Anything else, guys? Anybody
I
have?
got a couple of items, Brian.
Go right ahead.
So just a reminder, and Bob, you're still on the call. The list of your accomplishments for either photos that have been included for juried shows or accepted for publication, we're putting, as part of our proposal to the museum, we're putting together a, quote, list of member accomplishments. It will be submitted anonymously. So if, like Melissa has something at the, let's say it was a private show at Feathers, or not a show, a contest at Feathers, and her photo was accepted, I'd have photo accepted at Feathers Show 2020, but it would not include her name. So when I say anonymous, that's what I mean. It's a list of the club's members' accomplishments. So I need that by Wednesday, this week, by the end of the day.
Jim, do you have to have a year?
Oh, well, okay. So as far as a list of accomplishments, thank you. The idea is, what was the show or the publication? And if it was a show, where was the show physically? And what year did it occur? And if you received some type of a honorable mention or first place or second place award, that information as well. And it's for the, just, and I not to insult any of our older members who have gone back a number of years, just like a personal resume, we're going to limit this to the last 10 years. So if in, John, no offense to you, but like if in 1940 you won such and such, that's, that's good, but we're going to keep it more recent. Maybe 1940 was going back too far. I apologize, John.
Well, we could go to Elvis Presley back in the 50s.
So that's the first item. Several of you have already responded to that, and I appreciate it, that the more the merrier.
Well, Jim, before you leave the first item, here's a follow-up to that. Okay, you're gonna submit this to the museum for a possibility of a show. Now, if they accept us, and given all the discussion that we had today, what do you think we would be looking for in terms of size of images that we would put on the wall there?
We had a brief discussion on that, John. And first off, and I don't think we've announced this publicly yet or not, but there is going to be a theme to the show, assuming we get accepted. And the theme is basically scenes of Laurel Highlands. So it's kind of like the Hannistown exhibit, but it was limited to Westmoreland County. We thought it best that the proposal have a theme rather than just an open like our normal exhibits are. It would have a better chance of being accepted. So there is a theme to it. As far as print size, and Ann obviously supported that, is we hope to go large, relatively speaking, but we're not limiting it. So it's going to be up to the members. You know, those of us who had prints at Hannistown, those were all 20 by 30s. I think Rex and somebody else suggested that they had something huge. I don't think we're going to have a limit.
No,
The only limit will be wall space. And they did give me the dimensions of the gallery. I visited there a week or so ago, and based on some rough assumptions, it looks to be like our typical show. If we even weight it like to 20 by 30s and 16 by 20 frames, roughly 35 or so pieces of work will comfortably fit there. And that's going one high.
Okay. So you're kind of thinking maybe 20 by 30s as the norm. There may be larger, there may be smaller, but
I don't want to say the norm, but I think it would be I think the bigger the better. 5 by 7s are going to get lost unless it's a grouping of. Rex, I'm going to think of just for a second here. He's talked to us before about, like, he likes to do some door photography. Maybe Rex has a grouping of 6 photos of different styles of doors that could be grouped together as almost a single wall space, if you will. So
24 by 36.
I'm sorry.
24 by 36.
I'm listening.
I don't think there's a limit, Dennis. It's a matter of how much wall space we have.
Our original talk about sizing was 8 by 10s are out of the question. They're too small for the size of the wall. We were thinking more along the lines of a photograph in the neighborhood of a 16 by 20, maybe on a smaller side of 11 by 14, but no smaller than that, unless it is a series or a group of pictures, like Jim's example for Rex with the doors. If you wanted to do a 20 by 30, 10 or 5 or 6 or 8 or whatever 5 by 7s in that would be fine. But the idea is that it's a museum, it's a big wall, a little picture just ain't gonna work. So we gotta consider bigger photographs. Now, if you want to come in with a 30 by 40 or a 60 by 80, great. I would love to see that. I'm not paying for it, but I'd love to see it. So feel free to do that. Just, if we get accepted into this and we do that, if you're going to do something like that, we need to know early on so that we have plans for that ahead of time. But the 16 by 20 in the 20 by 30s, those are good sizes for what we're going to do as far as what we were thinking.
Jim, photographs that were in the Hannistown, are they acceptable as part of candidates to be put on the wall? In other words,
because the Hannistown exhibit was scenes of Westmoreland, they would meet the definition, the criteria.
Okay.
Yes.
And Brian, when you say a 16 by 20, you're talking about frame size, or are you?
Print size.
I always talk about print size and then put a frame around that.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that point.
I know
Thanks.
you use an 18 by 24, I think is one of your numbers or something like that.
Yeah, an 18 by 24 frame size holding a 16 by 20 image.
Right.
Yeah.
Anytime I say a size, I'm talking about a print size, and then I'm assuming we're going to put a frame around that.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to clarify for everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
Don, speaking of frames, the museum is not requiring us to be uniform in frame and or map design.
Okay.
You do it however you want.
Okay, that's fine. I know that was one thing that we talked about is one way or the other on that. So yeah, that's fine.
So Jim, we have to provide the frames as well. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, you're Bob. You're gonna supply a hangable photograph with a wire on the back of it, and if it doesn't have a wire and your name on the back of it, I'm throwing it out the window.
Okay, good. That'll be fine.
So any image, as long as it is in Laurel Highlands.
Right. It has to be the theme of the show is going to be scenes of Laurel Highlands.
Okay.
And just to take that a step further, hold on one second. And this is kind of along the way the Hannistown exhibit was. The exhibit would be comprised of photographs taken and selected by WPS members to highlight the people, events, historical and cultural sites, nature, and landscapes that represent Laurel Highlands.
So it's not any image.
Now I don't know what you're asking.
Margie, just ask your question instead of just saying,
Okay.
what is your
But
question?
the doors, okay, the doors would not fit into that category that he just mentioned.
Why not?
Well, the doors
They're in
was an
Laurel Highlands.
example of just the sizing and layout we talked about.
All right, a bug.
If it's taken in the Laurel Highlands, you're getting a little bit more too specific. You're getting a little too specific. How about this? I'm gonna do this. You're gonna have to be able to know that it came from the Laurel Highlands by looking at the picture. How about that?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking if I took a picture at a car cruise and it's just a picture of the car, even though it was at the Laurel Highlands, you wouldn't be thinking about that. But just to clarify that, and nothing personal here.
I think we're pushing this a little bit too far. I mean, the idea of the theme of the show is the Laurel Highlands.
Yeah.
Don't you think that we should be looking at something that you could recognize as being the Laurel Highlands?
I just wanted to clarify,
I mean,
Brandon.
that's my thoughts. You guys make a decision. I'm just giving you my thoughts. I'm not giving you a deadline, or I'm not giving you Jim's in charge of this. But
Well, you talk about landscapes. There's a lot of landscapes that are in different Allegheny, different parts that would still look the same in Laurel Highlands area.
Well, no,
Again,
Margie, I'm sorry. It is the Laurel Highlands. That's the theme of it. If you have a great landscape somewhere in Allegheny County, that's great.
What I'm saying, Jim, is nobody will recognize where that came from. That landscape would come from unless you have some kind of building in there.
Well, okay, I don't know how to even comment on that, Margie.
It sounds to me like she's trying to cheat.
No, I'm trying to, no. I can go out there and take quite a few different things of Laurel Highlands that could be in another area of Pennsylvania. How am I going to know, okay, are they going to recognize this?
Margie, it's not what they recognize. It's the photos that you take. We want photos that you've taken in the Laurel Highlands.
Okay, but you said they need to recognize it. That's the reason I'm keep going back to that.
It needs to be something recognizable that if somebody were to go and look for it, they could find it. Not like this tiny bug on a leaf.
No, the landscape would not work in there then.
It would work in there.
No, not unless you have a building or etc.
Margie, you're way over analyzing this. I'm sorry.
Margie,
You
if you have a
took the
secret spot
photo
you go
of
and
a
shoot
tree
landscapes from, don't
in
do that.
Laurel Highlands, submit that. There's nothing wrong with that. If you take a photo of a tree in the city of Pittsburgh, don't submit it. I trust that you'll be honest with it.
Well, it's not that. You had made a point. It must be recognized.
It is something that if you were to go and say, oh, where was that at? I'd really like to go see it. You can tell them where it is, and it's in Laurel Highlands.
Right, but they don't have to recognize it. Okay.
Okay, moving on. And by the way, it's great to discuss the hows and whys of this thing. The first thing we need to do is to get accepted. And part of that acceptance is getting that list of accomplishments, which is due this Wednesday. So next subject was our SWIG meeting on this month, which is November the 19th. Brian does have a flare on Reddit already. We're asking if you want to, you can submit up to 3 photos that have been juried into shows for us to review during the SWIG meeting. And this serves a little bit as a follow-up to today's presentation by Ann, in that you'll have the opportunity to kind of show your fellow members photos that you've had accepted into shows and maybe tell us a little bit about them. And it might give the rest of us some idea of what we should be considering when we're thinking of submitting a photo for a show. So hopefully it'll be educational. So 3 photos per person, and you can submit them in a group, if you will, on Reddit. And the other thing on the SWIG meeting, I'm going to be doing a demo on the Luminar photo processing software.
Can I clarify one thing for the SWIG meeting? I have it scheduled for the 25th, the Wednesday evening. The 19th, I will not be available. I have a meeting already scheduled for that night.
Oh, okay. So it's the 15th, did you say?
The 25th.
Oh,
it'll be a Wednesday night.
I don't think I'll be able to do that.
If you want to have it on the 19th, you're welcome to have it. I'll give you a password, but I will not be available on the 19th. That's up to you guys.
No, I don't care when it is.
I'm good either.
25th is actually better than the 19th for me.
Any objections to the 25th? Okay, 25th.
Okay, yeah. When I sent the newsletter out, I put that as a date for the SWIG meeting. I don't know if anyone noticed or not, but yeah.
You know what's funny, Brian? I noticed and I thought it was a mistake.
No, I was going to clarify that this evening because, of course, we're here having a meeting. Yeah, the 25th. Like I said, the 19th, I have a meeting scheduled. It's already been scheduled. I can't do that one. So.
I'll probably be making stuffing that night. So.
Yeah, I usually have the first 3 Thursdays of the month covered already before the month starts. So.
Melissa, can you make stuffing while you're on Zoom?
Then she's going to have 15 people on Zoom crying because they're hungry.
Well, yeah.
Oh, well, it depends. I rip up all the bread and put it in the oven. So it depends on how soon I get done.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry, Jim. I had to clarify that. Go ahead.
Well, I'm glad you did. Yeah. And then one last item. Got some time on this one, but we're asking, this is for the Hannistown tree portfolio, I guess I'll call it. The deadline for submitting photos for that is November the 30th, the end of the month. I'll send out a reminder later in the month. But those are photos of trees, and there are instructions that were emailed out on that. You basically upload them to a Google Drive folder, up to 15 photos. So that's due the end of the month.
I didn't get that email, Jim.
Hey, Jim, it would probably be a good idea to send that email out again with the link to the Google Drive.
Or can the link to the Google Drive be put on Reddit?
Yes.
Yes.
Because that would be easy to find.
Yeah. Yep. By the same token, I suspect I'll also send the whole package out again as well, because it contains instructions for it as well.
Yeah, I would do that, and then I'll take that link and throw it on Reddit for you guys.
All right. Okay, that's all I got.
You were going to say something about Luminar?
Yeah, you started to say Luminar when I interrupted you about a date.
Oh, we're going to have a presentation on using Luminar software during the SWIG meeting.
And this will be the standard Luminar, not the Luminar AI.
Yeah, number 4.
Yes.
Jim, I have a question. Jim?
Yeah.
Okay. I sent you, or rather I put on the Google, I had 13 images that I put up there.
Yep.
We went through that. Since that time, after I had the first surgical, rather the first nerve block, I was able to get out again. I went and I took right at the peak on our street, or just off our street on South Shenandoah, probably 4 or 5 really nice autumn images. Now, can some of those be added to that or in place of what I had already put up there?
Yeah, I hate to say you're entitled.
15 is the limit, right?
15 is the limit. If you said you did 13, you can obviously add 2. But if you want to add 5 more, just take 3 off from what you put on before. You should be able to select and delete them from the drive.
That's what I needed to know. Thanks, because I like some of them a lot better than what I had before. I mean, I thought they were okay, but these I thought were way more significant.
Yeah, by all means, Rex, change them out. No problem.
Done.
Brian, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Hey, you know how we're talking about our laptops always dying so fast?
Uh-huh.
Do you keep your external drives plugged into it at all times?
No, I only plug my external drives in when I'm using them.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I noticed if I forget to unplug it, it does drain it faster.
Yeah, my laptop, the battery's probably already shot because it's on almost 24 hours a day, so it's plugged in a lot. So the battery's probably not much good on my laptop anymore.
Yeah.
You need to exercise your batteries. Like my laptop, I'll unplug it and use it all day till it runs down, then plug it in. And then
I do that, DL, but when I unplug it, even when I first got it, if I unplug this thing, the battery on it lasts maybe an hour and a half.
I'm right there with you, Brian.
turn off some of the lights.
What did you say?
Brian, turn off some of the lights.
I don't have any lights on other than the keyboard.
The keyboard that lights up.
Keyboard.
I even went through with Annie and we shut down a lot of stuff and it still isn't the greatest battery.
Yep.
Yeah, some external hard drives have their own power inputs. So
Yeah, those drives.
Really coming from your own computer.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? Anybody? Any other questions, comments?
I've got a question for Alan. Alan, how is your eye?
Good. A little fuzzy yet, but I can see.
All right, good to hear.
Autofocus.
Thank you.
Jim, you didn't ask me about my colon.
Hey, remember I'm going
TMI.
to.
Hey, Bob, I was waiting for you to submit a photo.
You know what? I have photographs of it. Okay, can I submit it for Laurel Highlands?
It's photography.
Hey, Bob, Jesus, great, all dressed up.
Hey, Bob, you now have a mustache, though.
Yeah, he cleans up well.
Yeah, I clean up well. But I'll upload the colon photo, okay? Just for
things start coming up in conversation. But at the feathers, when we were talking, another thing that came up was an idea of if we ever need anything to do, take the same raw image and have everybody edit it a little on their own to see, and then we can show what the end product was and what we did to get there.
We've done that in the past. I think when I first came to the WPS a couple of years in, we were doing stuff like that. And it was really nice, if y'all remember.
I don't remember doing that.
Before my time, but that sounds like a nice idea, Melissa.
Just tossing them out there if we ever need anything to do.
Yeah.
Brian,
Yes.
I want you to know that Monty was actually looking at laptops last week.
Okay.
I thought you'd find that cute.
All right. Well, I'm going to toss this one out there for you guys. You guys come up with great ideas, pursue them. Say, I'm going to do this at this meeting and we'll add it in. Don't just come up with great ideas and then expect 1 or 2 people to finish that.
I don't have any good ideas.
So you know, if you come up with something you want to do it, fine, let's do it. You know, we always have time that we can fill. We have 28 meetings a day with this group, so you know, we have time that we can fill. So if you got an idea and you want to try it, put it out there. Let's try it. But take charge of it. Don't expect someone else to do it for you.
Well,
I'm
I know I
just
had
the
a boss
voice.
once upon a time who, kind of like what Brian is suggesting, if you have an idea, that's great, but don't expect me to do it. So along those lines, Melissa, it was your idea.
It was not my idea. I am the voice for the ideas in the discussions.
Well,
So
those
You brought it up.
Uh-oh, Beth is waving.
tell those cohorts of yours that you were discussing with, step up to the plate.
Okay.
I'm not throwing anybody under the bus by name. I'm just saying.
I can say for one person you were talking to was Annie. I can guarantee that. So. Step up to the plate. That is the answer.
Yep.
I'll take everybody gets the same raw image or JPEG or whatever. Do you want it to be like a still life or a landscape, or do we want to get two options? And I'll take that. Either we could do that in like February or March when we're not going to go out as much.
I think that should be one option. That way everyone's looking at the exact same image.
Right.
Okay.
That's just my opinion. And then Jim, we can set up a Dropbox for people or a Google Drive or whatever, where you can upload that image and people can then download a raw file rather than a JPEG.
Yeah, I say go with a still life rather than landscape, because you can do so much.
Yeah.
I mean, landscape, you can do a lot of different stuff, but you're probably going to end up with a lot of similar ones.
Yeah.
With the landscape as opposed to the still image.
Okay.
And you can add this into any meeting. It doesn't have to be a WPS meeting. It can be any one of our, any one of our meetings if you wanted, whichever way you want to go with that, that's fine.
Yeah, if you're doing a still life, make sure that everybody has the objects that you're using for the still.
No, it was going to be there will be a raw image.
Yeah, she's going to provide.
Everyone will work on the same image.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So you don't have to actually.
You don't have to take the picture.
No,
Margie.
I know.
Okay.
We could try doing something that way too, but.
By the way, my only comment, and I'm good with still life, but I think maybe with there's no reason not to do a landscape. Melissa, I'm not sure I agree with your sentiment as far as being able to do more or less with one type or another type of photo.
Yeah.
I actually think you can do less with a still life as far as interpretative processing than you could with a landscape.
Yeah.
Still life pretty much becomes a still life. I mean, other than making it, darker or lighter or
filters,
textures.
Well, I've got a really challenging one that I worked on for quite some time. I can show you before and after, but then you will see the before and after, and then you can decide if you want to attack it. I can put it out there.
Well, why don't you send it to Beth if Beth's going to be in charge?
Beth, shall I?
Sure. You've got my email, right?
Okay, I'll send you both, and then you can see what you all will be challenged with.
Yep.
I took automobiles that were, when I was on the street, I wanted, of course, to focus on trees and color, but it was very difficult with cable trunk lines sticking out, extra automobiles, stop signs, pieces of junk, you name it. But then I'll show it to you, and then you can decide if you want to put it out there for them.
All right, anything else, guys? Good comments and suggestions. I appreciate it all. Margie, thank you for, those of you that don't know, Margie stepped up to decide to take care of critiques
Critiquing.
at each one of our, I believe, are you doing just the WPS meetings, Margie, or have you decided what meetings you're going
I
to?
don't know. It's up to y'all. Which one do you like to do? Anybody?
Everybody
Thought
just
you all
did
said the
their meeting work.
25th. It was between the 19th and the 25th, right? You decided on the 25th?
No, this is for critiquing the photos that were entered into the photographer's choice.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Okay, so-
Margie, just talking out loud, since they're the photographer's choice photos,
It has to be in
the
a month
monthly
after the
meeting
voting.
would probably be the best from a timing standpoint.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter to me.
Yeah. That sounds good.
Yeah. Fine with me.
All
Well,
right.
and Margie, do you want to explain to the rest on the call what we're talking about?
We're going to be critiquing all of the entries into the photographer's choice. And I'll get more details when we start it.
So if you've entered a picture into the photographer's choice, the meeting after the end of the month,
Right.
and of course that will coincide with after the voting, which should always be done by then. Then we'll go through and critique each one of the photographer's choice pictures. That way you're going to get some comments from the group on your picture if you've entered into the photographer's choice contest. So, which we did a little bit in the past, but we kind of got away from it. So Margie has stepped up to the plate, as I mentioned earlier, and she's going to take care of that and make sure we get that taken care of every month.
Thank you,
I've always
Margie.
been very big on critiquing. That's the way I learned photography many years ago. I look at it as a learning tool. You want to be a better photographer, you have other people look at it, other photographers look at it and critique it. Shows you how you can improve it. It also shows you what they like about it. Like I said, it's a learning tool.
All right. All right. Anything else from anybody before we finish the meeting?
No, I'm just ready for bed. I'm tired.
Jim, for the list of accomplishments, I unfortunately cannot participate because you put a 10-year limit on it, and I haven't shown anything in over 10 years. So
how do you not?
You need to get your butt in
I
gear.
don't show anymore. I quit showing quite a few years ago, and
Well, I tell you what, though, here's an option.
that's the reason I asked you about years.
And I didn't really mention this, I guess, although in the request for accomplishments, I also, as an option, ask people to submit photos that have been accepted in juried shows that can become part of a photography portfolio that we're going to submit to the museum, just to kind of show in general what our capabilities are. So seriously, Brian, or anyone else, if you have photos from 20 years ago that have been accepted in a juried show, just send those to me. So we won't list it specifically in the list of accomplishments, but there's no reason not to include it in the photo portfolio.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, guys, I'm going to, I guess we can call it an evening.
Sounds good to me.
All right.
Night, everybody.
On
Night.
Wednesday for the Photoshop class, for those of you that are joining.
See you Wednesday.
All right.
All right.
Good night.
Okay, thanks. Good
Bye.
night.